Hello everyone, Tim here and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to paint this lovely winter scene. I want to thank all of my Patreon members for helping me choose this picture. We had a bit of a poll, bit of a vote going on my Patreon site with 4 great choices for everyone to vote on, all individual members' photos. First of all, we had Leslie's winter gate scene. Then we had Bob's view of a slightly wider river there, lovely blue colour of that snow. This is the scene that most people preferred that we chose to paint from for that month's project. And then we have Pia's snow-covered trees. So in this video, I'm going to give a complete commentary. This is an edited version of the live demo that I gave my Patreon members. It was preceded a day before with a little Zoom call where a lot of us discussed the finer points of the composition and how we would approach the scene and what we might remove and add to the scene and things that we wanted to change as regards to the composition. For example, there's 2 trees there on the left. So very, very interesting process to do that before the actual painting itself. And also at the end of the live demo, we had a bit of a show and tell where members that were painting along could share what they've been up to, whether it was a finished painting or a sketch or a work in progress. So quite interesting to see everyone's take on the same scene. So you join, I say this is an edited version of the live demo. You join me as I'm talking through the finer points of the composition. All right, so we discussed the scene at length on yesterday's Zoom call, and we had a good old discussion about what we would leave out of the scene and what we might include. It's a lovely photo to start with. It's got a really nice composition to start with, but we all had some I think most of us had some reservations with the 1 or 2 trees over here on the left, particularly this leaning one here, although I think it was Sadaka that suggested maybe moving that one into the right. But certainly these 2 may be removed from the scene. Let me just backtrack. So this is Soames Pond, Mount Desert, off the coast of Maine. And this little stream here, I believe it's coming from Soames Pond, and it probably meanders its way into the Atlantic somewhere downstream. We are looking slightly west, I believe. Jean took the photo 1 p.m. in the afternoon, 1 p.m. And sun, as you can see, coming from the left. And if I can just as I did yesterday, try and pick out the main features. So, of course, we've got this stream coming down from, well, almost top right there. Wasn't sure whether there was a couple of streams joining each other. It's a little bit difficult to see what's going on in that kind of section there. But it comes down to bottom left and it winds out. And there's a few little cascades here. With some foamy stuff to give us more of a challenge. In the distance, we've got a little bit of a wood. I go right in there. There's a little bit of a wood that rises up to the right. I guess it's coming closer to us. Now let's just come over to the left. Well, it might be a little bit over there. So beyond this, if you can make it out, there's a sort of, in the middle ground, there's a sort of field, meadow or whatever that's catching a lot of light, and it sinks slowly down to the stream. But over there on the distance, we've got that wood and really complex. Look at all those trees, complex trees in there. There's been a recent snowstorm, and the snow has come over our right shoulder, and we can see the snow covering on the trunks of the trees. So we've got to think how we might do that. As someone said in chat, preserving the whites. And there might be a couple of ways of doing this. negatively painting around the snow color, or using a little bit of white gouache or body some thick white paint to create the snow there on the bark on top of a dark background. Quite light here. These tree trunks, they're going in all sorts of different directions, mainly vertical, but there's a few leaning, which creates a bit more interest. For example, this one here, crisscrossing that one there. One of the main features, I think, or one of the main attractions of the scene is the snow. The texture of the snow is fluffy white snow, sort of blobs of it, and they're creating these depressions. The profile of the surface is creating some interesting shadow shapes, these sort of ribbons, these little lines of shadows going across the top of the snow. We discussed on our Zoom call all the different colors going on there, warms, cools. Can you see reds? Can you see blues? Can you see greens, yellows, and so on? So lots of different colors in there. It's not gray. And so we've got to think about the color. We've got to think about the value as well. The river, really dark, quite dark at the water's edge. Strong sunlight coming in because it's winter. It's not high up in the sky. It's a fairly sort of low elevation, coming in low across the sunlight coming low across the scene. There are a few different trees as well. We spotted a few sort of conifers in here. There's one almost in there, an evergreen tree in there. There's one here as well. So you may or may not want to include those. Well, I think a few of us thought, well, let's decrease the number of trees in the scene. What else can we discuss? What else could you include? It is an area that's well known for its wildlife. So maybe if you want to get creative, maybe you want to put in an animal, a wild animal, in there somewhere. I'm tempted. I was thinking about, after the call, putting in a fox. So I've had a few ideas about including a fox coming down that bank on the right. Anyway, so click on that green source photo button and you'll be able to download Jean's source photo. Let me just go back to me. There we are then. Yeah, so trying to translate Jean's photo to some kind of a plan. And what I normally do for these demos is just a little bit of a sort of thought process on the sequence of how I might tackle things. So hopefully you can see the main objects. We've got the background ridge, the woods going up there to the right. We've got the stream coming down here, left bank, right bank. And these numbers represent the kind of sequence, the process I'm going to go through. So one, let's get in the sky and a little bit of underlying color to the snow. The snow's not white. Well, it is quite bright there. It is quite bright there and on this tree trunk going over to the right. So we're talking about preserving the white of the paper, so I might do it there. But in other areas, just put down some sort of color just to take off the white of the paper. And then two, go in slightly darker with the darker snow color on the trunks. So certainly the main trunks, the bigger tree trunks, put in some snow color for those. Three will be the background woods, and I'm thinking about these evergreens as well. So we're gradually going darker here. So starting off with the lights and then gradually going darker generally. So three, get in the background, not all of those individual trees, but just a feeling of that background. Four will be now painting around the snow-covered tree trunks left and right, because the snow, on a lot of them, the snow it's either on the right or it's sometimes on the left. So just painting around those clumps of snow to reveal the snow So the kind of dark edges to those tree trunks. Number 5 will be the shadows. 5 shadows. So once I've got the trees in, the shadows, thinking about the contour of the land going across and down on the left bank there, on the right bank, rises up. There's a ridge coming down here, rises up to that, then slopes away. Number 6, we're going darker, the dark stream, although preserving a little bit of white for the little cascade of the little waterfalls that are coming down that stream. And then 7, the little details, twigs and branches and that sort of thing, just to make it more woodland like. So that's my my process there. Let me go to the materials. Normal materials: Saunders Waterford cold pressed paper, 300 grams, 140 pounds, 15 inches by 11 inches. Paints, I'll go through those as I go through my paint process, and I'll try and describe my my mixing combinations as well for you. Hopefully, those of you on here live, you're having a sketch along with me or paint along with me. Please let me know in chat if those of you on here live, if you're painting along with me. And towards the end, well, at the end, after I finish my painting, I'll open out the event. I'll open out the stage, as it's called on Crowdcast, to you. And we can, if you've got a microphone and a camera your end, then we can have a quick look at anything that you might have been up to. Might be a sketch, might be work in progress, might have finished the painting. It'd be great to see you at the end. Right, let's make a start then. Where to make the first mark? Well, I think for me, it's going to be. Let me just check if there's any questions first of all. Nope, don't think there's any questions. Please ask any questions in the click on that question icon if you've got them as we go through. So don't worry about interrupting me. I'll come to those at a relevant place. So starting off with the drawing, I think getting in the end of this field that's sort of coming down in this direction, it dips down, then it rises slightly up to the right. Just trying to get in that as a sort of dotted line. And we're coming down to the stream, and then, as I say, it does rise up a little bit to the right. Now, the distant woodland, there's some trees over there, and there are some distant trees here, just a sort of outline of those trees. So sky, distant woodland. Now, the stream, roughly, it's coming down like that. So we will start it, or I'm going to start it somewhere about there. And we can just see little dark patches of the stream in between the light of snow-covered trunks. But it's sort of, and don't make the bank straight. It's got lots of indentations. Do those in a minute, but roughly it's sort of coming down like that. Now, we discussed on the Zoom call making the stream in the bottom left-hand corner wider. There was a good suggestion to try and bring it a little bit, I think, a little bit further over to the right. In the photo, it sort of comes up here. So I'm going to move it over to the right, and it goes up, and then there's a little inlet, and then there's a little bit that juts out and comes up, and then goes over, and then continues over up into that right hand. right hand corner, and there's a little bit of, yeah, so this, it almost looks like there's two little streams that join here. There's a stream there and a stream there. That's what it looks like in the photo anyway. Now, draw in the main tree trunks. Well, I'm ignoring the two that are on here on the left. They, particularly that second one in from the left, because it's sort of, it runs from top to bottom. It sort of cuts the whole scene in two. So it's not a good idea to put that one in, I don't think. There are some trees over here on the, just above that left bank. And they lean, they're not strictly speaking vertical, although they are a bit more vertical there, but they lean a bit more to the left on that left hand side. There's some more here, coming from this bank here. There's a tree, so this is the first major tree now, and it comes out from this right bank. So I'll draw the left hand edge of the tree trunk first, get that in right, and then we can decide on the width. So it comes out at an angle, and then it decides to go vertical. And then, so that's the left side. Now let's do the right hand side. Getting the width right, of course, it's going to get wider towards the bottom, a little bit wider. A lot of these young trees, they're almost the same width. But this one does go a little bit wider towards the bottom, and then comes out and then goes out to there. It's a clump of snow there. Just while I'm over here, I'm just going to form the bank in a little bit more detail. So take a bit of time looking at the edge of the stream, left and right, and try and just define that in your drawing stage a little bit more. There's a clump there, almost looks like a tennis ball, and there's a bigger one in front of it, almost like a semicircular piece, and then there's another lump there, a lump there. Oh, it's all lumpy stuff. And so I'm just defining those main clumps. There's a little bit of darkness in here, so that's dark in there. Now there's another tree trunk, almost, it starts in the middle and it goes off to the right, and then behind that is a thicker trunk. Let's do this near one first of all. So the right hand side of the trunk first of all. And just at the top of Jean's photo, it does, there's a horizontal limb that comes out. I'm going to have that lower. We'll pretend that's going to go up there. So there's a bit of snow resting on top of that. Now the left-hand side of this trunk, and that again it's almost the same sort of thickness. It's thicker than that one. And there'd be light snow on that left-hand side. There we are. Now, the one behind that, this thicker trunk, is almost going to be the thickest trunk we're going to be doing. That starts around about here. And it just shoots off at a sort of, I don't know, 15, 20 degrees off the vertical, something like that. So the left-hand side of this trunk, and it comes up and there's a little bit of a limb that might have been lost there. So we give it a bit of character. Now the right-hand side, this is thicker. Go a little bit wider towards the base. And there's that funny sort of little Christmas tree shaped tree here. There is one tree here, very small little sapling that comes up to about there, and then it forks left and right. I don't think I'm going to include that. I think I'll miss that one out. Moving up to the top right corner, we've got all sorts of trees. Quite narrow. And then this ridge on the right-hand side, it comes down from that right-hand side to around about here. So I'll just do a little dotted line just to indicate that. And then there's these ribbons of shadow, if I can describe it as these ribbons, these lines. And they're more horizontal in the distance, but as we come down to the foreground, they're almost 45 degrees. Right, I've just defined the right-hand bank a little bit. Let's just do that a little bit more, and then we'll turn our attention to the left-hand side. So over to the left, this is the water's edge here. These clumps of snow on the left. Now I've removed these two trees, which were sort of hiding this left-hand bank. So I'm having to kind of guess what was over there. There's a little bit of a cascade there. So water's gushing over here. And then just down here, water's gushing in down there as well. So it's coming down some other boulders or whatever, going into depression, and lots of sort of bubbly stuff and foam finding its way downstream. So there's a little bit of a depression there in the stream. Continuing our little journey up that left-hand side, triangle there. Something like that. Now, I'll think about, so a couple more things for the drawing. Any sort of notable side limbs that you might want to put in that will have some snow on top of them that you might want to try and paint around when we come to painting in the darks to create the the feeling of snow. For example, there are some horizontals here, but I'm not sure if they're coming from the tree I've decided to remove. Well, there's some side limbs there. And I think there's a side limb off here. With these trees, try not to, when you do the side limbs, don't have them sort of coming out opposite each other. Just offset them a little bit. They're going to look a little bit more natural. So, for example, I've got that side limb coming out there. I wouldn't put one there. It's going to look a little bit odd, but maybe a smaller one down here. That will look a little bit better in my opinion. Yeah, there's quite a nice tree trunk going out there. There's some more here. So there's a clump of trees there. There's a clump of trees here. Right, I think that's it with the trees. Foxes. I was going to put in some animals. I just before I came online, I just looked up the web and a few pictures of foxes, and I'm going to have the fox. I'm going to have the fox here, but it's going down the slope. So, yeah, I did a few of them sort of at a slight angle. That's got a. I want to get a bit of movement in the fox as well, and if a fox is a little bit like a dog, sometimes when I do close-ups of dogs, if I do them too quickly, they end up looking like pigs or something not very dog-like. So, but the fox, they've got a small sort of snout and pointy ears and a big bushy tail, a quite sort of bushy, hairy body, obviously for the insulation. Maybe if I do something similar to maybe that one there. Now, where will I put this fox? Coming down the slope, and let's put it around about here. So we've got the nose and then the body coming downhill. And then we've got the left front leg coming out like that. Now, because this fox is going through the snow, we don't need to worry too much about where the legs are. It's dipped in the snow a little bit, so got one leg there, and then the left rear leg, something like that, and dark ears. Then the rear leg coming out, the right rear leg coming out like that, and then the bushy tail, which is almost, when I've looked at photos of foxes, the tail is almost as long as the body, but a hairy sort of bushy tail, of course. Don't want to make that nose too big. Yeah, just rub out that nose a little bit. There, that might be all right, and possibly there might be some footprints there where it's come over the bank and just coming down here to investigate, have a drink of water or something like that. Okay, so I've got some wildlife in there. I think that is it from a drawing point of view. Not too much detail on those smaller trees. Trying to get in the shape, the edges of the stream there, defining where that top ridge is going to be, the distant woodlands. Yeah, I think that's sort of all right. Let me just see if there's any questions, and then I'll make a start on the painting. Helen says, "Don't trust myself with a fox. Trees, yes. Believable fox, no." Yeah, don't worry about the wildlife. Or you can look online, photos of little deer as well. Maybe a couple of deer might be nice in the scene. Right. So painting wise, then sky. Get in that underlying color for the snow, just to take off the white of the paper. Sky first of all. And I'm going to go with, now the sky in Jean's photo, there are some clouds in there. I'm going to simplify things a little bit and just have a plain sky, a wintry sky. So a bluey green would do it for me. A little bit of Viridian. Oh, my colors, by the way, normal palette. These are from Mark Jackman in the UK, Jackman's Art Materials. And I've got neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, English oxide or light red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, lavender, quinacridone gold, Naples yellow, gouache, and a white gouache. Right, sky. Not too strong, but this a greeny blue I think would be nice up against the sort of more warm colors of the distant forest there. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you leave little bits of the paper unpainted here, because when we come to putting in the trees, they could be little bits of snow resting on the branches. So I'm doing a little bit of painting around that one. I want a good strong line for my distant ridge. Now come down to my first tree and then just continue over. Perhaps could get a little bit stronger here because we're away from the direction of the sunlight, and leave a few little bits of the paper unpainted. Over to there. Right, a little bit of color on the snow. So I've still got a little bit of very weak color. You probably don't notice it, but a little weak color on the brush. I'm just dampening the main areas of the snow a little bit. And then we'll just drop in some color. Just to take off the white of the paper. It doesn't matter again if there's little bits of the paper showing through, but just to sort of cover up the paper. Right, a warmish yellow, very weak yellow, very, very weak yellow. Over on the left-hand side, and possibly going a little bit of quinacridone gold or burnt sienna or something like that, just to warm it up a little bit, says he, just trying to get some of this quinacridone gold. That's better. Likewise on the right-hand side. Now, on the right-hand side, more a sort of a weak violet, a weak purple. So if I go with a little bit of cadmium red and a little bit of ultramarine blue, just dab it in to, as I say, just to take off the white of the paper. Cadmium red, a little bit of ultramarine blue. There we go. So that's pretty much that first stage done. Oh, I need to bring in the sky in here. Back to my sky color. Now the distant woods over here. A warmish color, burnt sienna. Let's see how we get on with that. It's a little bit darker than the sky. A little bit of ultramarine blue, but mainly burnt sienna. And perhaps a little bit of cadmium orange. Need to make sure that want a hard line there. So I'm starting to paint carefully around these trees. Cadmium orange, burnt sienna, maybe a little bit, it's a little bit darker on the right-hand side, a bit of burnt umber. We can always go darker with these woods if it's not dark enough, but just to get in the essence, the start of the essence of that distant wood over there. And then of course it does rise up, so it dips down, then rises up. Maybe a little bit here as well. There's a tiny bit of the distant trees down there. Right, next we've got to go in with some darker snow color for the tree trunks. I'm going to now just get out my hairdryer just to dry things a little bit. just to dry things a little bit, just while it's still damp, get in a little bit of extra color on that right hand side. Okay, just going to dry things a little bit with my hairdryer. Excuse me. My microphone should cut out straight away, so you won't hear this. Still sticking with my mop brush. I should have mentioned my brushes. So I'm using a synthetic mop brush. This is brand Tintoretto Series 1407. And I'll probably be using this brush for a lot of the painting. Right, the color of some snow. So this is going to be darker than this snow here, the light shading on the snow. Maybe not as dark as the background though. It's going to be cooler. So let's use this stuff here and that I use for the sky and just add a little bit of burnt sienna into that. A little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. Not too dark. Right, let's get in. Now, this one here, there's a little bit of snow. I need to go a bit lighter than that. There's a little bit of snow at the top and more at the bottom. That's that one. And then the widest tree trunk. A little bit of cobalt blue. Down to the trunk that crosses it. And then this one here that's going over diagonally. Now, around about here, there's some light that catches the left-hand side. So we'll swap over to the right-hand side. So we've got light on the left and not all the way up, but just in certain places. And then just as it crosses, there's a bit more shadow shade there. And then we can see the light on the left-hand side again. And we'll go all the way up. And this side limb here. Maybe that one. And then a few major ones here. Like that. So I'll just let that dry a little bit. I think while it's drying, I'll get in some of the darker trees in the woods there and these evergreens here. I'll stick with my mop brush, but I need less water on that brush, almost a dry brush, I reckon, for this. So that I can see with the body of the brush there's too much water. So I'm just going to mop that off. I've got a couple of sponges over to my right, and then pick up something a lot darker. From a previous painting up here, I've got, well, it's probably a little bit of burnt umber, a bit of neutral tint in there. But if you haven't got anything suitable, then make it up. Possibly put in a little bit of viridian green, because we're painting now. We're painting now some of these evergreens, but they're covered in snow, so it's not a solid foliage shape. And we'll just, so I'm going to use the side of my brush here. So keep looking at the source photo for a bit of inspiration here. Generally narrow at the top and then wider. It sort of comes out sort of Christmas tree shape, bit of a cone type shape. There's the little Christmas tree stripe shape here. And then in the woods, top right corner, I need to go a little bit darker there in places and then define some key vertical trunks. So we've got these clump of trees here. Go a little bit darker in some of these, the intersections between those trunks, just to define the darkness of that wood a bit more. Go a little bit darker. Good way of cleaning up my palette, this. There's actually a darker trunk that comes down Comes down there. Few verticals for the trunks of the trees in the distance, just a few of them. Like that. I will go in there later on and go in with some white gouache just to define the snow on those vertical trunks, and then maybe just a few more darks just to make them a little bit more tree trunk like. Yeah, it's all very complex here when you look at the photo. All these twigs and branches and limbs and so on, all crossing each other, pointing down, pointing up. Right, over to the left-hand side here, this is dry, and then get in a few of the tree trunks there. So a little bit of ultramarine blue, burnt umber. We're going for a dark brown shape, a dark brown color for these tree trunks on the left. So I'm doing this clump of trees here now. And first of all, some distant, on the left-hand side, some distant trees. And then some wider ones. Might change my brush in a minute for a smaller brush. This might be just a little bit too big at this stage. Right. Next, these larger tree trunks. So 1, 2, 3. The darker wood, painting around the snow just to define that snow covering on the trunk surface just a little bit more. I'm going to go to a flat brush here and similar sort of dark color, not black, but use a little bit of burnt umber here, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Now, not too much water on the brush. And now just define the tree trunk and the snow. I've got to come in from the right-hand side. A little bit easier down the left here. Not too much water on the brush, almost a dry brush. So start from the left-hand side, get a hard edge, and then just go maybe not so much down towards the bottom where there's more snow covering the base of the tree trunk. Right, so let's do the main one now. This is going to be easier because it's a wider tree trunk. So start from that left-hand side, and we're getting that sort of deckled edge of the snow. Have it looking fairly natural looking by not making it too regular. Right, just below, just before it hits the ground, and the trunk just splays out a little bit to the buttress roots. Right, now my tree here that's going over to the right, this one has got the darker tree trunk on the right hand side. So excuse me, you probably won't see what I'm doing here, but I'm basically from the right hand side going to flick over to the left, then hopefully I'll get that hard edge on the right and a soft edge on the left. Fingers crossed. Start with the base. Halfway up. It's quite narrow on this right hand side where the tree trunk is showing through. Cover up some of those. This is where it forks. And then this little side limb here, come up to the underneath of that, and that side. Let's continue that up. Yes, we're sort of getting there. Right, I need to go to a smaller brush now, and I will, so the choice I've got is that one or that one. Let's go with this one. So this is a size, I think it's a size 8. So I'm still putting in these darker tree trunks. ultramarine blue, burnt umber. And trying to define all of these myriad of trunks here. I'll go in with the rigger brush later on to get some finer lines, but just to get in the essence of these main branches here. So up here, the trunks, there's some coming down, there's some crossing each other, some horizontal, some vertical. Where I left the paper white, you could then just come in behind that or below it just to create the feeling of a trunk just supporting that snow. Sorry, this is rather laborious to watch, but it's a very important stage to get in all of these distant branches. So try and get the continuity going as well. So where you have a tree coming out from the ground and then this disappears behind a tree and a side limb in front of it, just continue it on. Nearly there with all of these tree trunks. Just do a few more. As I say, going with a rigger brush or a finer brush later on, but just getting a few of those thicker, darker tree trunks in that distance there. Remember to come off the top of the paper as well. Just continue lines going off the paper so you don't get a nasty sort of edge appearing. Right, I think we're ready for some snow shadows now. And this is where I need to think about edges, because there are some, with the shadow shapes that go across the snow, there are some harder edges and some softer edges. So what I'm going to do is, in a fairly random fashion, just add in some little blobs of clean, clear water, just so that as I go over with these ribbons, these lines of shadows, just here and there, I'll get that soft edge as it's hitting a damp area. So I'm just going to use my mop brush here to create this, wash it off, make sure I've got a clean brush. Right. And then I need to do this particularly on this lower section here and on the right hand side, the lower section of the left bank, and then on the right hand side, just here and there. Like that. Now, shadow color for this snow. We want to try and introduce lots of variety into the colors that we're putting into these shadows, and think about the value of them as well. Not too dark, not too light. It's sort of in that middle range. It's a little bit, it's a tiny bit lighter than the distant wood there. So think about that. So not as dark as that wood. Right. And keep injecting in different colors as well. Right. Let's just start off with a ultramarine blue here and a little bit of cadmium red. Ultramarine blue, cadmium red. Almost 50-50. And then just on that, so I'm using a mop brush again and just lightly touching the surface to create these shapes that I see. Keep injecting different colors in this. Now so the light's over on the left, and then coming down, we have these, maybe there's some trees over there on the left, and they're coming down. The shadows are coming down from there. There's a lot of shadow in here, a lot of darker shadow actually, so a bit more intense with the mixture they've got going here. A little bit of a lighter shadow in the distance. And just as we go up to the wood, there's some interesting little bits of shadow up there. Keep the same mixture going. Maybe a little bit of cobalt. Oops, a little bit of cobalt in this. Now, as we hit the riverbank, we're going a little bit more solid with the shadow. There's not so much light coming through, and I just want to now come down to the water's edge. Like that, just get some more lines coming down. That's that evergreen tree. Go a little bit darker with that. Okay, now the right hand side, similar color, cobalt. I'll switch to a cobalt blue now. Cobalt blue, and then a little bit of cadmium red. But it's a lot cooler here. Oh, there's some warm shadows there. Then it's cooler, and then warmer. Right. I should want some more. Some more softer edge in that bottom right hand corner. Right, so a little bit warmer in the distance. I picked up a bit of light red, and now on this right hand side, we're also starting to create the form of that ridge. So almost horizontal shadows, and then they go up the bank to the right. Let's just get in this 3 in the shade. Going over the fox. A little bit cooler as we come down. Right, there's a blob here that's in the shade. I introduce some appropriate shapes of those shadows coming up to this ridge. Right, on this ridge then, little bit warmer. Right, there's a strong shadow that comes here, and then it's quite shady just in that bottom right corner, and then just a little bit of extra shadow on that ridge. Down here, now these blobs, they, with my flat brush, a little bit like the technique I use for the tree trunk, trying to get that hard edge and a soft edge for these blobs. So an appropriate color and value, not too much paint on the brush, and these little blobs here, for example. So starting from my hard edge, just create with a flick, just create that little hard edge and a soft edge. And there's hard edges and soft edges up here as well. I'll let that dry a little bit. The snow I had coming down the trunks has got to be at the same value as the snow on the ground. So I need to just adjust that a little bit. Just wish you saw me do there, trying to make sure the value is the same. Right, same technique over here, trying to create the feeling of a depression more. Particularly on the river's edge, the stream's edge. And just where I see it in this top right corner here, some denser wood in that background forest. Right. What's next? Oh, I need to do a little bit more shading down here. This snow is just about reaching the stream. Pick a bit of lavender, a little bit of burnt sienna, and then create let's create a little depression there. Go a bit darker, a bit of neutral tint. So where you see it, just make up these little depressions. Right, as this is drying in the bottom left-hand corner, I can start to define some of these edges a bit more. Not too much paint, not too much water on the brush, so it's quite dry. Yeah, just trying to create the illusion of this sort of lumpy stuff. Okay, right. Next will be the stream. I need to go darker in a few places. That tree there, that tree there. But let's do the stream. Now, the stream has got a little bit of foam from the cascades. There's some blue sky reflected here, of course, because we've got more of an open area there and an open area there. So there might be a little bit of blue here. The rest of it, though, is dark, apart from the sort of foamy stuff coming down from the stream. Right, so with my mop brush, let's go in with some appropriate sky color. I'm using a lavender and an ultramarine blue. Oops, not quinacridone gold. Lavender. Then in here, and in here, there's that sky reflected. Now, the rest of the river is quite dark, so, but not, I've got neutral tint in my palette, but not a sort of charcoaly grey, maybe more of a sort of navy blue, if I could describe it like that. So in my palette, my neutral tint, or you got Payne's grey, that would be a good color, but neutral tint, ultramarine blue, that might be a good combination to start with. And then we've got, starting from the bottom left hand corner, we've got the dark side of that river, but that's the shadow of the left bank over the river. And then we've got that light. And then trying to, right, I need to use the edge of my brush to create the edge of the cascade. Go a little bit darker in there. More neutral tint. And this is where we can now form those clumps. The clumps in the foreground here. Paint around those. These sort of tennis ball like clumps. And then we're going into a little sort of inlet here. Up to the snow. And there are some very dark little spots or blobs within the snow. I'm not sure what they are, but maybe just little sort of deep holes in the snow. Right, continue up. Now this is a tricky bit where all this moving water is. Starting from the left-hand side. Going up to the next little cascade, and it goes, right, it's a lot darker here. Up to the edge of the snow. And we're getting narrower now as well as we go up this channel. A little bit darker. And it's actually a little bit darker. It's darkest on the left-hand side. And then we're meeting the left-hand side, quite narrow now. Paint up against these tree trunks. Can I see any of the stream there? Maybe not. We continue now on the right-hand side of these. And that's that left-hand fork, and then there's a sort of right-hand one up there. A little bit of darkness here. With the flat brush, just try and make a soft edge to that side. Okay. Right, while I've got this dark stuff, can I just a little bit lighter, but just add a little bit more definition to my conifer, my evergreen here. So dry brush. Dry brush on that one, and then this little one here. That's completely covered in the snow. Actually, there's a little bit of darkness that comes out. Yeah. So the water, the stream comes in on this right-hand side. Few more lines just to try and create the effect of the moving water. I might need to go in a little bit darker with on the lighter areas there, just to, there's a bit of shadow, a bit of shade coming across there. Right, I need to now do the fox, do some darker trees. Let me do the fox first of all, make sure this is all dry around here. Yes, it is. Right, fox then is going to be in my palette a red fox. So maybe my light red, bit of cadmium orange maybe. Paintbrush wise, I think I'll stick with this medium round. And bit of cadmium red. So make sure it's dry around here. And then of course this fox is in the shade, so maybe I could go a little bit darker. And a bit of cadmium orange. Try and alternate the values and the color as we're going up the body. There's a rear leg there, and then the tail. No, go a little bit darker with the rest of the body, the legs, the ears. And the nose, the face. So the right hand leg is sort of like that. Then the left rear leg is sort of like that. And then the rear leg. So hopefully it looks a little bit fox-like. Let's put some footprints in for the fox. Got to have some, I think there needs to be a little bit more shadow below the fox as well. Does it look sort of fox-like? might be a bit too bright at the moment. Would it need to be? Maybe the tail should be. Should the tail be a bit darker? Maybe. Might be need to be a bit whiter on the nose there. Anyway, right. Next, some darker tree trunks. Let's go with a smaller brush, and I'll use actually, should I use a rigger brush? No, let's start off with a slightly bigger brush first of all. Darker tree trunks. And a few of those little dark blobs that I can see on the far side. Yeah, this is a better brush. I'll get in a few dark trunks and then go in with some opaque white paint for the snow on the side of these trunks. Bit of dry brush. A little bit more definition to the ridge at the back there. Just a little bit. Okay. This fox might need a little bit of shadow on the tail and the body. Just adding in, again, looking at the source photo, just adding in little marks here and there where I see them, just to make them a little bit more natural looking. Rigger brush. Right, let's do some finer twigs and branches. So rigger brush then. Not too dark. And where I need some denser denser covering of these branches, thinner lines. From the side of the paper and down over the scene. Right, let's get in some little twigs just coming out from the snow. You see them particularly around the base of tree trunks. Right, I need to just glaze over, make some of this water a little bit darker, just a tiny bit. What brush shall I use for this? Let's use my mop brush, a soft brush. Don't want to damage the surface I've painted already. And a warm light shadow, I reckon. Maybe some of this, maybe a little bit of quinacridone gold. And then just a little bit here and there. Here, in here. Now, nearly there. Need to now put in some, with white gouache, some snow on some of these tree trunks here, these verticals, and maybe some of the horizontals as well. Back to my small round brush, make sure it's really clean, of course. I think that's almost there. And then white gouache. Now, this white doesn't need to be ultra white, a sort of almost like a light grey in a way. I've got some white gouache in the bottom right corner here. Could put in a little bit of lavender in this, just to go a little bit off-white. And then it is going to dry a little bit darker, but get the right consistency. And now, starting from the left, let's get in. No, I need to be lighter than that. Get in a few choice broken lines of this. These verticals, just a few. Let's have a few coming down here. And some branches there just catching the light. It's going to show up against that dark background there. Look where you've got some darker twigs, and then just put where there's a dark background, put a little bit of white on the other side of it. It's going to show up a little bit more, like here, for example. And not a continuous line as well. Not too much of this. Right, moving over. Let's put in, need a bit more water on my brush. Right, nearly there. Let's do this last third over here, and I've got that tree coming down there. Let's have that coming into the right hand side. Now, just in this little clearing here, there's a few more tree trunks. Don't forget the horizontals as well. Not too many. Oh, we've got the fox. Let's put a little bit of whiteness, just a tiny bit in there, possibly a bit on the ear. Yeah, I think that's it. Perhaps a bit of highlighting on just the leading edge of his face. Right. I'm nearly there, everyone. Of course, as always, it's knowing when to stop. I'm using a little flat brush here with, again, my white gouache, just to that effect with the hard and soft edge. Yeah, up here, I could just get in a few more. Right, I think that's enough. Just add a few little dots for some foam. This little stream here, and maybe a little bit here. There we go. I think I'll call it a day. Right, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. I might be just touching up a little bit after the event, but I'm pretty much there. I think I've got the essence of the scene. The Soames Pond, and thanks very much, Jean, for your source photo again. Right, so at this stage of the proceedings, if anybody would like to show what they've been up to, a sketch, work in progress, or a finished painting, we'd love to see that. And if you can make yourselves known to me in chat, please, then I can